Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the Cabinet on Monday, the 14th of September 2024. May I remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live via YouTube and the recording will be archived for future viewing. Could all councillors and officers ensure that when they speak, they switch their microphones on, and when they finish speaking, switch their microphones off? This is extremely important for the live stream to ensure that the cameras will be pointing at the individual who is speaking. Item 1 on the agenda, to receive apologies for absence. Andrea.
Thank you, Chairman. We've received apologies from Councillor Chowdhury and Councillor Fitzpatrick.
Thank you, Andrea. Item 2, declarations of interest. Are there any? No declarations of interest. Item 3, to approve as a correct record the public minutes of the meeting held on the 19th of August 2024. I would like to propose that they are a correct record. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Simon. All those in favour? Any against? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, Andrew. Item 4, to consider any urgent business brought forward to the meeting under Rule 12. There is none. So we move on to item 5, forward plan. Andy.
Thank you, Chairman. This is the forward plan from the period of the 1st of October this year right the way through to the 31st of January 2025. Happy to take any questions on the forward plan.
Are there any questions? No questions, thank you. Item 6, Climate Change and Nature Action Plan, Review of Progress 2023-24, and that I think is you, Mark.
Thank you, Chair. This report presents progress on the Climate Change and Nature Action Plan at the end of the 23-24 financial year and provides the latest CO2 emissions for the Borough and the Council. In 2022, emissions for the Borough were 606.5 kilotons, an overall downward trend of 42% since 2005, and a reduction of 3% between 2021 and 2022. Transport, domestic energy and industry and commerce accounted for over 98% of the emissions. The Council is taking action across all of these areas, but influence is limited. In 23-24, Council emissions were 2,024 tonnes, an overall downward trend of 43% since 2009-10, and a reduction of 4.5% or 95 tonnes in the last year. The reduction in the last year was almost entirely down to moving the corporate energy contract from standard electricity to green electricity for the second half of the year. In 23-24, outsourced services accounted for 42% of the Council's emissions. Council vehicles accounted for a further 41%. Energy use in corporate and service buildings, that's gas and electricity, accounted for 12.8%. 3 separate consultancies are involved in identifying actions to achieve net zero across the corporate and service buildings, that's the Town Hall, Brew House, Market Hall and Staffordshire Hill Cemetery, the vehicle fleet and depot, and also the leisure centres. All 3 consultancies will have reported by the autumn, and this will provide the information necessary to establish a pathway to net zero by 2040 for the Council's estate and operations. The Council's Climate Change and Nature Action Plan contains 52 current actions plus 2 proposed new actions. Progress can be summarised as follows. 46 actions are RAG rated red, 46 actions are rag rated green. No, the mistake there, yeah, 46 green. 4 actions are rag rated red. 2 actions are not yet due to start, and 2 actions are proposed newly added. The completed actions are listed in Appendix 2. A selection of actions with notable progress are presented in the report. 4 of the actions in the action plan have been rated red. It is recommended for all 4 actions that the target date is revised to either Q3 or Q4 of the next financial year. It is recommended that 7 actions in the action plan are revised. It is also recommended that 6 actions are deleted from the communication and engagement section of the action plan because the initial work has been completed and the actions are now ongoing activities, and that's things like maintaining and updating the website. It is recommended that 2 new actions are added to the plan. Action 3.9 is to produce the format for a strategic nature recovery document that will meet the Council's reporting obligations under the strengthened biodiversity duty. And Action 4.3.5, which is to develop a pathway to support decarbonisation of the taxi fleet in line with the work of the Staffordshire Taxi Working Group. The recommendations are as follows. The overall downward trend in annual CO2 emissions for both the Borough and the Council are noted. The overall positive progress with the implementation of the Climate Change and Nature Action Plan is noted. The proposed changes to the target dates for the actions rated red are approved, and the recommendations for revised, deleted and new actions are also approved. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mark. A very concise and clear report which shows that we are moving in the right direction, and we very, very hope, well, we will achieve net zero for the council by 2040. Reaching net zero for the whole of the borough relies on things that we have less control on, but we're still determined. And as far as the public is concerned, although they only play a small part of adding to the amount of carbon that's emitted, they still have a job to reduce their carbon footprint, and we will in the future be providing some information that will help them measure their carbon footprint and reduce it. So thank you, Mark. Are there any questions? Rob?
Yes, thank you. I agree with you, Chair. It's a very comprehensive. It's a very comprehensive report and worth reading. Obviously, in many respects, the Council is doing well. I just wondered, reading through the report on CO2 emissions, Mark 5.2, the emissions for the Council, including ledge facilities and ID Verdi vehicle fleet. Is there any way of telling whether those outsourced fleets emit more CO2 compared to the local authority fleets?
Yeah, I've spoken to both Everyone Active, obviously the leisure centre provider, a lot of CO2 emissions from the council's carbon footprint perspective, and also ID Verdi. Everyone Active, they're currently using it's not a green tariff, but it's probably the cheapest tariff they can purchase at the moment. They do have a target to be 100% green electricity by 2030, but that's in line with government targets for decarbonising the electricity grid if that happens. With ID Verdi, when they last reported in April, they were just using standard diesel, so there was no indication that they were using any electric or any alternative sources of fuel such as hydro-treated vegetable oil.
Thank you for that. Could I ask one or two things? On page 18 about the partnership working with Beat the Coal, I noticed 134 have been referred. How many people have turned down the opportunity for this support?
I'd have to get back to you on that one. That's not my particular area of work, so I'll pass the question across to...
That's great. And would we be returning to them, or would we then be looking at the people who are next in to her?
Okay, so how many people have effectively refused? Yeah. Do we return or alternative next on the list? Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I'll come back on that one if that's okay.
And lastly, I've got some other questions, and I think I'll send them to you rather than talk about them here, Mark. They're nothing to do with the quality of your report, all to do with a little more understanding from me. On 5.3.6, action 1.3.4, it's about energy efficiency measures. So 25 properties and the target was 150. They were in such poor condition that they need prioritising through enforcement action.
Yeah, that's the...
And did these properties, were these properties being managed by Trent Dove, or were they owned and managed by private landlords?
Yeah, okay.
And it's recommended that the target date is revised.
Rob, can John come in on that one?
Oh, yes, sure.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, just to come in, it was a variety of private landlords that those properties were attributable to.
Okay, thank you. And lastly on this one, recommended that the target date is revised to Q4 in this year. Are you confident as you can be? I mean, you're not a magic worker, I know, but are you as confident as you can be that we'll reach that target by the end of Q4?
Yeah, again, the domestic energy is Rachel's area of work, so I'm not involved unless you've got anything you can add, Dennis or John.
John?
Thank you, Chair. I think some of the initial delay caused by this particular target, Councillor Hawkins, was because it was difficult to source an actual contractor to go in and do these works. That was a considerable contributor. So, I mean, in terms of the date that's been put forward, you know, I'll be guided by my colleagues and officers there, and it seems like a realistic one.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
I'm not talking about the target date being extended, just how realistic it was that we would or might reach it. And thanks very much. I've got a few more questions and I'll email them to you. And it's not about the quality of your report, which is excellent. It's about some things that struck me as I reread it.
Yeah, great.
Thank you, Rob. Can you copy me on those? Copy
Yep,
me in on those
course.
questions. Thank
Yep.
you. Item 7, separation distance and amenity supplementary planning document. Tom.
Thank you, Chair. So this report presents amended design guidance relating to separation, distance and amenity, as you mentioned, and recommends the adoption of a supplementary planning document to that effect. So the need to review this SPD arose following a recommendation from the Local Government Ombudsman, and that was really relating to how we undertake assessments for daylighting and access of light. So consultation for this revised SPD in accordance with the appropriate regulations, following a 6-week process, and the response to those have been summarised in Appendix 1. The revisions to the SPD itself include things like updating how we assess material loss of light on all principal windows of adjacent dwellings, guidance on the use of the 45-degree code, which applies on the horizontal plane, and the introduction of the 25-degree code, which works on the vertical plane. Overshadowing and overlooking and the use of design solutions rather than opaque glazing, and corrections around emitting size of open plan combined kitchen and dining living areas. So the recommendation to the report, Chair, is to approve this SPD following the consultation that's been undertaken, and to delegate any minor revisions, such as reviews to diagrams and the like, to the portfolio holder. Happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions? In that case, we'll move to the vote. All those in favour, please show. I'm proposing it, sorry. So can we have a seconder? Can we have a seconder? Thank you, Simon. All those in favour? Any against? No. That's carried, thank you. We move on to item 8, Q1 revenue and capital outrun report. That's you, Lloyd.
Thank you, Chair. So the report presents the 2024-25 forecast outturn for both revenue and capital as at Q1 of the financial year, alongside an analysis of budget variances It also provides an update on our treasury management activity, as well as the key corporate and strategic risks the authority faces. The projected revenue budget is currently showing a forecast overspend of £113,000 against a £16.79 million net budget. And the report does provide a detailed commentary at individual portfolio and departmental level of those revenue budget variances. And in summary, whilst we are seeing areas of pressure, most notably within planning, legal services and revenues and benefits, those pressures are partly mitigated by forecast underspends in other council services. However, there is a residual pressure, and it's therefore important that as we progress through the financial year, we continue to identify and implement actions to address that remaining pressure wherever possible. Section 5 of the report provides an update on our treasury management activities and shows that as at the end of the first quarter, investment stood at just over £60 million, and our performance on yields for the year to date have averaged 5.37%. The forecast investment income will obviously continue to be monitored quite closely through the remainder of the year in light of recent interest rate movements and expectation of further movements across the remainder of the year. Appendix B does provide a full breakdown of our investments at the end of the quarter. And then finally, in terms of capital, Section 6 of the report sets out the position for both the mainstream programme and the Towns Fund programme. The capital programme for 24-25, following carry forwards from last year and other approved amendments, now sits at £18.86 million, with a forecast spend against that of just over £16.5 million. There is a small forecast underspend of £48,000 on the capital programme and a profile of £2.29 million into 25-26, with full details provided at Appendix C. And recommendations for Cabinet are set out at Section 13 of the report, where there are a number of areas where we're asking Cabinet to note the position both in terms of revenue and capital, and we were also asking Cabinet to approve a number of amendments to the capital programme. I'll stop there for questions.
Any questions? Rob?
Right, sorry about that. The figure at the end, does that include the Section 106 affordable housing money that was used, I believe, in the original plan for that project, particularly Project B, I understand, and was intended to be used on the key workers' houses, which obviously fell off the project. Has that money been returned to the Section 106 funding, or does it remain in the Treasury?
So at present, the budget that's set out there at the end of Q1 is the remaining budget for the Towns Fund in total. So we at present would still include that Section 106 funding. Okay,
thank you. And lastly from me, the Section 106 contributions on 6.9, £3,189,000. When are they what we have collected, or are they due upon completion of a certain number of houses? And I presume a lot of these were related to the building development up Stafford Road in New Toxteth. So the table at 6.9 sets out how we funded the capital programme, so the financing of it. So in terms of the Section 106 contributions that are set out there, they're funds that we've already received. So we've allocated funds that we've received against financing part of the capital programme. So there's still uncollected Section 106 money taken into account in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom, I think you wish to come in.
Thank you, Chair. It was just on the Towns Fund Project D budget item, just for absolute clarity. The figures that's included in that table there on page 14 reflects the approved position as per Council, and there's been no change in policy from that point formally at this stage.
Thank you. Right, we're asked to note the Q1 forecast revenue budget variance, which is an overspend against a budget of 113k. In relation to the capital outrun, we're recommended to note the Q1 forecast for 24-25 and approve the proposed capital programme. We're also asked to recommend to note the position in relation to the Council's investments and borrowings as at the 30th of June 2024, and to note the risks facing the authority and associated mitigations and control measures in place as outlined in Appendix C. Can we do that? All those in favour, please show. Thank you. On to item 9, Q1 Performance Report, Corporate Plan, Leisure Contract and Towns Fund Programme. Sean.
Thank you, Chair. This is the 2024-25 Q1 Performance Report, which looks at the Council's progress towards achieving its corporate priorities between March and June of this year, along with the latest updates on the Leisure Contract and the Towns Fund Programme. For the corporate plan, each target has been graded using the system, and of the 79 live targets, 94.94% are green, 1.27% amber and 3.80% red. The tables on pages 6 and 7 of the covering report show further analysis, including how those percentages break down across the corporate priorities, as well as individual cabinet portfolios. Please note this report does not reflect the recent cabinet restructure, however the reports from Q2 onwards will do so. The red and amber targets are detailed in the table you can see on pages 8 and 9 of the report, which include comments to provide additional context around the circumstances with each of these targets. Appendix 1 includes comprehensive data on all the indicators within the corporate plan. The report also goes on to provide information on the performance of the leisure operating contract in section 6 of the report, which highlights 77 green targets and 1 amber. In addition, section 7 of the report summarizes project progress for the Towns Fund programme. This details the 3 partner projects which are currently identified as being on track or completed, with a positive RAG rating for delivery, spend, and risk, with some projects having key communication milestones falling within the next 6 months. That concludes the summary of the Q1 performance update. I'll pass back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Sean. Any questions? Right. The recommendation, we're asked to consider the performance at the end of the first quarter towards achieving the Council's corporate priorities and leisure services contract and Towns Fund programme. Is there any comments? We're all very happy. Okay, thank you. And now I will now move that in accordance with section 100A brackets 4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the press and public be excluded from the remainder of the meeting, as it is likely, in view of the nature of the business to be transacted or the nature of the proceedings, that there would be disclosed exempt information as defined in the paragraph of Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Act, indicated in brackets before the item number on the agenda. Can I have a seconder? All those in favour? Okay, that's been moved and accepted. So we now move into